Okay, Art, anytime.
Okay, thanks, Chaz. First of all, good morning. We got a beautiful spring morning out here. I say spring morning because the sun's out. The other day I walked outside and I got a gust of air in my face and it was nice soft air and I thought, my God, spring's coming. And then last night I walked outside and I got a gust of air in my face and it was like 18 degrees and I thought, well, spring's not here yet. But so we got a nice winter day here. Anyhow, it kind of, to me, reminds me of what's going on with these vaccines. All of a sudden, it seems the vaccines are coming online a little bit more, and people are getting vaccinated, and everybody's getting excited about when are we going to open things up. Well, if you listen to the doctors, we can't get too anxious about that because of these variants coming in. So we got to continue to be careful, and probably we'll be wearing masks through most of this year. One thing that the education and outreach group did was to come up with a form, communications guide, actually. It's in the newsletter. We did a full page. And it's for when you go to the doctor or a clinic, tips on what to do to prepare them for the fact that you have hearing loss.
That's
and make
great.
your visit a lot easier and to walk away with much better knowledge of what's going on. And also to make it easier on the doctor because the doctor knows that you got the problem. So that's in this month's newsletter, the March newsletter on page 7. And if you haven't got the newsletter handy, go to hearinglossrochester.org and it's on the website. Just go find forms and you'll find it. So that's one thing that's happening. We with the Zoom capability, we've been talking a lot about outreach, and I just got confirmation this morning from Janet McKenna that we're actually in the In Good Health paper in Buffalo and Syracuse now with our ads, and they actually managed to get our stuff about our presentations and so forth in there. And so that's another thing that's developing to try to pull people in from a little bit further away where they don't have any HLAA support right now. Since we have the internet, we might as well use it.
Great.
There's also another development coming along. I call it the beginner seminar. Joe Kozlowski is working it up. It's going to be maybe a two session seminar, probably hold it early May. And that's going to be a challenge from the point of view that we're trying to reach people that are just getting into hearing aids or just got a hearing aid, the kinds of things of what you should be concerned about and maybe the things you should watch out for with all the new stuff coming on the market. So we're working on that. I think the first session might be May 6th, but watch the newsletter and so forth because it'll get locked down in terms of the time. But we're trying to expand from a customer point of view our value. And one of the things about that I really would urge you people to think of is the people that we're appealing to for a new series, they don't even know us. So you got to do a lot of word of mouth. You got to suggest to people, if you know somebody that needs hearing aids or is thinking of getting into hearing aids, suggest to them that they link up with us and take advantage of what we've got to offer. By the way, I want to thank our captionist who's doing a great job. Lindsay's our captionist today, and I noticed she's keeping right along here. The captionists are fantastic. We're working on a new slogan, and it kind of came to me when I was looking at the mission of HLAA, like what are we all about? And the way the slogan goes, it's very simple. It's better hearing, and then there's an equal sign, and then better living. Better hearing equals better living.
Nice.
So what we're about is to help people hear better, and if they can hear better, they can probably live better. And that's kind of the whole story in a nutshell. So that's we're probably going to lock that in and put it on some of our new material that we're getting developed. We're engaging a new graphic designer to put some stuff together that fits with our new Zooming world here that we're in, instead of in person. And then just remember that we have the Hope Sessions on the second Tuesday of each month. That's at 10 a.m. And the Demo Center sessions on the third Thursday at 10 a.m. And this month on March 16th, Suzanne Johnson will be doing her second session on lip reading. So if you have a chance, make sure you're registered and you'll get the invite and just come and join us. We got plenty of space on the Zoom capability for more people. So with that, if Mary's online, I'll turn it over to Mary and we can get going here, okay?
Mary is having trouble joining still. I wonder if I could put Sue on the spot and ask her to introduce Sam.
I'm sure Sue can do a great job at it.
I'll give it a try. I didn't know until this second, but it is a joy to introduce Sam. And I have to also, in introducing our Sam Trychin, introduce his dear wife, Janet, because she is an equal part with Sam and they're a dynamic duo. Actually, with Claire, there he is, they're there. And Claire is also a very important part. So they're like a trio, all three of them. I've had the honor and the pleasure of knowing Sam and Janet probably since close to 1988 or 84. Sam, were you at the first convention in Chicago in 84?
I was with the first convention, yes.
Then I have had the pleasure of knowing you since 1984 at the very first national convention in Chicago. And Sam, your workshops have been standing room only for years and years and years. They always gave Sam the largest room because they knew, the staff knew that no matter how many people could sit down, there'd still be tons and tons who would still be wanting to stand up all around the room. So anyway, it is, and Sam Trychin is a psychologist. And I could go on and talk about all of your attributes, but I think people would rather hear from you than anything more about you. So with this, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Sam Trychin and his dear wife, Janet. All yours, Sam and Janet.
Thank you so much. It's always good to see you and to hear you. It's wonderful. All of you. I can start out a little bit by talking about myself and my hearing issues. I was, the first time anything ever happened, I was about 4 years old and I got the spinal meningitis, and my mother took me to the family doctor because she thought I might not be able to hear very well. And he gave me the old hearing evaluation, which is putting the wristwatch to my ear and saying, "Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it?" And I heard it all the way across the room because I didn't want to have a hearing problem. And then when I was in my, I guess I was about 19 or 20, and it was the Korean War had started. And so I joined the Air Force, and I was on a waiting line in New York City of all the people who were lined up to go into service somewhere. And the hearing test was a guy that came down the line, and he said to each person, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" So I passed that one. And then I went to control tower operator school in Mississippi, and then to Germany, where I worked in the control tower. And if you're in air traffic control, you get a hearing, vision, speech evaluation every 6 months. And when I got my first one, they flunked my hearing test because it was given by an audiologist who knew what he was doing. So I was no longer a control tower operator very quickly. And I got into supply and was able to finish out my time, except when they found out I had a pretty severe hearing loss, they sent me back to Walter Reed Army Hospital, where I went through a 2-month-long full-time hearing aid assessment and evaluation and how to cope with hearing loss program, which was wonderful. So anyway, that was my history with hearing loss. So I've had it for a long time. And I started to work at Gallaudet University as a professor in 1983. And I still didn't know anything about my hearing loss at that point, except I had it and I was wearing hearing aid. And I heard about SHHH, self-help for hard of hearing people. And I went up to see Rocky Stone in Bethesda, Maryland. And I told him I had been starting to do a group work at night at Gallaudet for people who were hard of hearing. And he said, why don't you come and do it in our office? And we'll give you, you can go for 8 weeks. We'll give you 1 hour a week. No, actually it was 2 hours on one day a week for 8 weeks. And so I said, okay, so we did that. And at the end of 8 weeks, everybody wanted to go more. We ended up going 32 weeks. And that's when I learned about my own hearing loss, was listening to other people and what they were doing about their hearing loss in order to understand better, and then run back to the university and go in the library and see what was written about living with hearing loss. And there was virtually nothing. There was one fella up in Canada and a few people in Great Britain who were writing anything about living with hearing loss. So anyway, that's my story. So I've had it quite a while. And then I started doing the, workshops and all the trainings and that kind of thing. So today we will find out what some of the issues are for people, and then talk a little bit about what can be done that can be helpful, and particularly difficult at this COVID time when people are wearing masks, which is not a great help for lip reading, right? Or speech reading. And people tend to be more isolated at home, and that can raise some emotional issues if some people feel kind of trapped or locked in. So those are all things that need to be recognized and dealt with. So can we have thank you, Janet. Anytime you want to add something or delete something, you can jump in.
Okay, are you ready for your?
Janet is an audiologist, doctoral level audiologist, and she works mostly right now with babies under the age of 3 who have hearing loss.
Are you ready to for the PowerPoint?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Let's grab it here. And good. You're ready to go.
Okay. So I hit just
See if that works. Yeah.
advance.
Okay, so let's go down here and go use this instead. How's
Okay.
that?
Okay. We got it. So COVID requires a change in what and how we do things.
Good.
Both. So, for example, what we do is really restricted in terms of social stuff, in terms of being out and around. And the change requires always time. Change is not easy for any of us, particularly changing in habits that are long standing. So it requires time. And for people who have hearing loss, one of the things that we strongly suggest is learning how to relax. And that requires, number one, identifying the signs and symptoms that one is getting tense. You know, often it's facial muscles tighten up, the neck muscles tighten up, lower, upper back muscles, shoulders, you start to feel it in there. And so to be able to scan yourself when you're in a situation that feels a little difficult, being able to scan all that and make a change in what you are doing, and to find ways, which we'll talk about a little later on today, talk about ways of relaxing, which really means getting the tension out of those muscles in the body. Because one of the things that happens when you have muscle tensions, a lot of muscle tension in your body, the message to your brain is, something's wrong, which puts your brain also into an alarm mode, which is really not helpful in terms of deciding what's the best thing to do. So change requires time, changing habits. It requires energy. You have to actively do some things. You might have to actively take the time out for a couple of minutes and just relax all the muscles of your body. We can go through a procedure a little later on today on what's a helpful procedure. And change requires patience, because it's not easy. And we have habits that are ingrained. Changing them requires, again, time, but also patience with ourselves and with other people, and also hopefully humor. If we could learn how to laugh or giggle at some of the issues that we face, instead of saying that they are awful and terrible and unendurable, it's very helpful in being able to identify changes that are positive, doing things differently to get a different effect. Now we go to,
Go right here, right there.
oh, down
Click
there.
that.
I'm learning about the computer business here. Okay. And one example is of changes that are required of us right now due to COVID is, you know, how do you get food? That's very important. And it's a big issue. And, you know, the ways of doing it is you can go into the store. Well, that's got some additional problems for those of us who are hard of hearing, additional to getting infected by somebody if you go in. So the other issue is you have to wear a mask, and other people need to wear a mask, and mask is not very helpful for those of us who have hearing loss, who need to speech read other things. So that's one way of getting food, is to go into the store, which is dangerous. What we do is we pick up our food curbside. So we pull up to it, we order the food online, pay for it online, and then they give us the time to pick it up, and we drive to the store, park outside, and somebody comes and puts the food that we had ordered in the trunk of the car. And that works for us very well. Another option is somebody else goes to the store for you if you don't want to leave the house or don't want to go outside. And another option is the store delivers food to your residence, and it probably other kind of things that people can do. And the reason for putting this slide up is to show that we do have a lot of options, even though life changes under this COVID and we have to do things differently. There are options for us that can be helpful. Developing patience is not the easiest thing in the world to do. And we can't and shouldn't ignore problems, because problems are there. Social, personal, environmental kind of issues. But it can be very helpful to focus more on solutions, possible solutions to the problems, rather than just focusing on the problems themselves. And so what can we do in order to minimize the problem or minimize the effect of the problem and to stay positive? It's very easy to slide into being negative and being down, but that's not at all helpful. It just makes everything worse. And jump in anytime you have something that you think, well, geez, what does that mean? Or I want to add something or change something, so just jump in. And what are problems for hard of hearing people these days? I mean, they're pretty obvious for those of us who are immersed in this issue of hearing loss. And one is the mask, so you can't see the person's face and you can't speech read and that kind of stuff. And that you have to maintain distance. So we're talking about maybe 6 feet at the minimum. So that with the distance, it's more difficult to hear a person's voice. And the voice volume is an issue, as it always is. And if the person's voice is too soft, being at least 6 feet away, or if they try to compensate for the distance and the mask by shouting, that's not helpful either, because it just distorts the voice quality and the message. So these are things to just be aware of, and other people who live with us or who relate to us, who have hearing loss, need to be aware of these issues. So what are the major effects? Of the COVID virus and our responses to the isolation or other issues related to it? Is one of the major effects is cognitive. Means, what are we thinking? What are we believing? And there's a tendency for some people, or for many people, to get into, I can't do blah, blah, blah. I can't go out with my friends. I can't do this. I can't, due to the COVID, I can't do. And to say I can't do something every once in a while because it's accurate and true is not a big deal. But to be saying I can't a lot is pretty depressing. And so we need to be aware of how we talk to ourselves as well as how we talk to other people. So vocabulary we use. Emotional affects how we feel. So it's very important to be able to identify and alter how we are feeling. If you are depressed, the chances are you're not attending very well to what's going on in the environment, socially and otherwise. And when you are not attending very well, you stay disconnected. You are disconnected to what's happening. So we want to be able to identify when we're feeling very badly about something and change that at the moment. Behavioral, what can we do to be productive? Some people behaviorally, given the circumstances that we face with COVID, behaviorally, what they do is they just give up and go to stay in bed longer, or self-isolate, or just resort to watching TV all day long. And that kind of stuff is not very productive for us. So for each person, what can you do to feel better? Can you be talking to people on the telephone or emailing back and forth? Or if you're going to be, can you start to read some stuff that's helpful for you? I mean, what do we do when we're at home that can be productive for us and maybe productive for other people? And socially, the issue is, how are we interacting with other people when we have interactions, whether they're face-to-face or by whatever other means, telephone or TV or whatever that we're doing, and how to stay positive in interactions. Because if you have a couple people, both who tend to be either have a tendency towards being anxious or being depressed, they can both, if they stay focused on the negative, can exacerbate the feelings in each other. So it's very important socially to try to stay as positive as possible. And again, if anybody has any comment you want to make or something to add to what I'm saying, feel free to do that. An important one is the major effect of this in any distressing situation, let alone COVID, is its physical effects on the body. And what happens is that when we run into distress, we tend to respond physically. Changes happen in our body, and they're there for a good reason for many things. So if you go back to Alley-Oop and the cave people, for example, when Allie is walking down in the woods and a saber-toothed tiger jumps out at him, it's very good that Allie starts to use his muscles, particularly at his legs, and run and get out of there. Or if he can't get out of there, to use his arms and whatever else in order to combat the tiger, to fight with it. So it's very important that we get a lot of muscle tension in order to be able to do things. But for a lot of the distressing situations related to hearing loss that we get into, we don't have to, or we shouldn't be running away. We shouldn't be fighting. And it's if you have a lot of muscle tension, the feedback from the muscle tension to your brain is, something's wrong, something's wrong. You got to do something. If you can stay relaxed, or most of us need to learn how to relax the muscles in the body, then we are in a lot better condition to deal with whatever the problem is that we're faced with. Where am I? So we started to talk about it a little bit a moment ago, but it's very important to be able to manage emotional arousal. So becoming super anxious or becoming quite depressed is not helpful. It's not helpful in dealing with the issues in our lives. And so we need to be able to identify and change the thoughts that we have in our head that lead to emotional arousal in the body, which means increased muscle tension in a variety of ways. So yeah, the issue is to identify, because many of the thoughts that we have are not at a conscious level, that they're just out there like flashing lights, but in the back of our head kind of. But if you stop and you really think about what's going on in our brain, you can identify thoughts that are not very helpful. Thoughts like, oh, I can't deal with this. So whenever there's a can't, it should raise a question mark or raise a signal and say, uh-oh, what does that mean? I can't. Or if you have another thought that involves should or ought, somebody should do something, somebody ought to be doing something that they're not, that's going to increase negative emotional arousal as well. People just do what they are doing, say what they are saying. And if you're not happy with that and you like to see a change, what do you do in order to get the person to change that particular behavior? Or what can you do for yourself to be less distressed by that particular behavior? So when I change negative thoughts to positive thoughts, what do I need to do differently in order to feel better? And related to having to stay home a lot more than I want to. What can I do better? What can I do differently that will be helpful in managing and feeling okay with what I've got? Or another thought is, if somebody's doing something that has been distressing for you, and thought can be, instead of, God, this is terrible or awful, or he or she is terrible or awful, and if that thought can be changed to, how can I help him or her do differently? How can I help them? What can I do that would be helpful to that person in regard to this particular issue? And finally, in managing emotional arousal, it's critical to increase our physical relaxation, because again, as I said before, increased muscle tension throughout the body leads to negative emotional arousal. I mean, it's like your muscles are saying to your brain, something's wrong, you better do something. And you want to just to be able to calm that down. And so one of the ways of doing it is changing breathing, changing the way you breathe, because what happens for many people, when they get distressed, they get into rapid upper chest breathing. And so what we want to do is to learn several things. One is to identify when we are starting to get emotionally aroused. So you know it. What's the signs for you? They're going to be somewhat different for different people. What is the sign that you're getting upset or you're getting anxious? And you can say, well, I can see my breath, my breathing is changing. So one of the things you can do is to practice slower, deeper breathing. So you're bringing in air through your nose, filling your lungs slowly from the top. I'm sorry, from the bottom up. So you're filling your lungs from deep all the way up, holding it for a second or two, exhaling, and then again, breathing in slowly, deeply, exhaling, exhaling. That, along with learning how to decrease muscles, is very helpful. So we can do a face if you want at the moment. So one of the things that happens for many people when they're anxious is that the face muscles change. So we can exaggerate that. And if you can screw up all the muscles in your face and make it as tight as you can and just feel that tension in your face and then relax. And starting in your forehead, you can feel the warm, comfortable feelings of relaxation as they move down through your forehead into your cheeks, your jaws, your mouth, your chin. And when you're in a state of relaxation, you're much better able to use your brain to solve whatever issue you are facing, and use your brain in a way of saying, this is not really as important as I'm letting on, or I have to do something different in order to not have the same experience in the future. So muscle relaxation, and we have tapes. I'll send Sue some copies of tapes, a relaxation tape that takes you right through, starting with your face, and takes you through all of the major muscle systems in your body, on how to relax all of that. It takes some time. You need to be, in learning it, you need to be fully supported by laying down on a mattress or in your bed or whatever, and then doing the practice and seeing the difference between the muscle tension and your muscle relaxation, and see the difference in how you feel and what you think. Affects everything. So Sue, if it's okay with you, if I send you a couple of tapes. Okay. Where are we?
We're gonna do deep breathing.
Hmm?
Are we gonna do deep breathing?
You want to do the breathing
Yeah.
one? Okay. Let's do a breathing one because it's not that long. But what I'd like you to do is just to try to get the tension out of your shoulders and neck and just relax a little bit in your muscles. And then you can either close your eyes or not and just focus on inhaling, filling your lungs slowly from the bottom up to the top. Count for for a count of 3. And then exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And keep your attention focused on what's happening in your body as you're doing that. Get a sense of the relaxation that's occurring. And also to be able to practice that periodically during the day on your own. And so you want to have it practiced well enough so that when you get into situations that in the past have been depressing or arousing, emotionally arousing, that you can immediately, automatically almost go into the breathing. It just makes your body more comfortable. It makes you physically better off. And it allows you to think more clearly in a situation that has typically been difficult. So relaxation is very important. The breathing is very important. Do you have?
That's good. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't have to do that. I can't do that.
Okay, I got it. Takes teamwork.
That's
Another thing we need to do is to learn to manage communication. And in one of the books that I'll send to Sue, there are things for a hard of hearing listener to do differently in communication situations, and things for the person who is talking to do. And so I just put some of the major things, there are like 12 things for the person with hearing loss to do, and there's about 12 things that the person who's talking needs to do. So I put some of the major ones in this list, and a hard of hearing person needs to, number one, pay attention to the speaker. That seems very obvious. Have you ever run into somebody who has hearing loss, who has lost the skill of paying attention? We see it. We see it. And when groups of people get together, we see those people who have kind of given up and they no longer pay attention to what's being said. So if you're not paying attention, what does that do with your ability to understand what somebody's saying? It's not helpful, right? But what happens is you can blame the speaker. Oh, he talks too fast, they talk too low, whatever. But the issue can be for some people, they lost the ability or losing the ability to pay attention to the source of a sound. Another thing then that a listener with hearing loss needs to do is to inform the person talking about what they need to do to be better understood. Because people are talking to you, they're saying something, they want you to hear it. And so it's helpful for them to know what it is they need to do so that you will understand what they're saying. And we don't want to do things by informing the speaker by saying things like, speak up, stupid. That's not very helpful. What we need to be doing is to say, I'm really interested in what you're saying, and I can understand you better if you just slow down a little. And when it gets right, I'll give you the signal. I'll give you the signal. Or I need you to raise your voice somewhat. And when it's right, I'll give you the signal. I'll give you the signal. So letting people know what they need to do so you will understand them better. And then throughout that is making polite requests rather than demands. And then to stay relaxed. So this is again with the practice of relaxation, the daily practice of relaxation comes in very handy. And when you're practicing the relaxation, the first times that you do it are going to require effort and are going to require thought, and it can be a little more difficult. But as you get into practicing the relaxation, it gets easier and easier until you get to the point where you're doing it without even thinking about it very much. You get into situations that in the past have been difficult, you just automatically get into that and they are less difficult. Then the person who's talking has a whole list of things that they can do in order to improve communication. And number one is to face the listener. How many times, for those of us who have hearing loss, how many times have people talked to you from behind you or from another room? And is that helpful in understanding what they're saying? Not usually. So we need to face the person with the hearing loss and be sure the face can be clearly seen. Because if I'm talking to you and I'm blowing my nose at the same time, how much of that, how much are you understanding when I'm covering my face? Or it can be just simply doing some nervousy kind of things that take your attention away from what I'm saying. And a person who's talking needs to be able to adjust his or her volume level. You know, because a lot of times somebody who's new to the whole hearing loss domain finds out you have a hearing loss and they start to shout, and that is not very helpful. That's not very helpful. Or that we have many other people who are so used to talking low that we can't quite grasp what they're saying. So the issue is to adjust the voice level so that we can understand it. And we can be helpful with that. We can ask them, is it okay with you? You know, you're talking a little low and because of my hearing loss, I'm not getting it. Would it be helpful for you if I just do this and then tell you when it's right? Or you're too loud. It's helpful for you to lower your voice and I'll tell you when it's right. So people are getting some feedback, because people, generally speaking in the population, don't know how to talk to a person who has hearing loss appropriately. They've never been trained. So we can do the training. We need to be able to resort to writing when necessary. Wow. What does that mean? If you're going to be in a conversation with somebody where it's very critical that you understand what they're saying, very important that you understand what they're saying. You might want to have a little pad and pencil with you, and periodically, if you're not getting something, to ask them to really write that down, those words down, that phrase down, or that sentence, whatever. And the person who's speaking, like family members of those of us who have hearing loss, or friends, good friends, need to also ask what they need to do to understand what they're saying. And for all of it, for both sides, the listener and the speaker, to relax. And by saying to relax, we mean to have gone through some relaxation practice in order to be able to really do it. So there's deep muscle relaxation, breathing practices, those kind of things. Where are we? Oh, thank you all. Where are we? Oh, we are almost there. God, the time went fast for me. I don't know how it went for you, but any questions or comments that anybody has, I'll be happy to try to address them. I think one of the nice things about dealing with or being a member of this population of people who either have hearing loss or who live and frequently communicate with those of us who have it, is that we share lots of issues. And so we can learn from each other lots of ways of reducing miscommunication and increase our understanding of what's going on around us.
May I jump in at this point and say, Sam, oh my goodness, the relaxation technique was, I sat here and I almost fell asleep. That was just the forehead and the cheeks, and that was just great. And I have a feeling we have 7 minutes left. And I have a feeling that with all of these people here, that somebody does have a question. And I can only see a part of this screen. So if you, oh yes, Bruce is saying the most dangerous words at a meeting are when the speaker says, oh, I don't need a microphone, do I? How do you all react? I think, how do you all react to that? What's your take when you hear that? Do you sit there like a mouse and not say anything? Or do you raise your hand and, as Sam would say, tactfully and politely express the fact that?
Yes.
How do you ask questions here?
Yes, Elise, go please. What is your question? Elise,
Well,
begin.
I just wanted to say that on Zoom, I can actually hear better than I can in real true life, in actual life. And I prefer the virtual life because I have a Bluetooth connection that connects to my hearing aids and also connects to my computer. And I could hear essentially every word that Sam said, but of course he spoke very slowly and carefully.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on and read on the back of that comment. I rely, because of my interest, but I rely heavily on technology. If you've never used an external mic, I encourage you to try it. It's amazing. This one's proprietary, but you can make one out of a pocket talker, a wireless one. It works fine. If you have trouble understanding that, get a hold of me. I'll give you the recipe. But technology can really make a difference in hearing other people.
Yes.
That is so true, right, Sam?
Yes, exactly. We use all kinds of devices for watching TV or for communicating with other people. And there's
The doctor,
the what?
the doctor, you used Roger Pen.
Oh yeah, well, I use a Roger pen. We go to the doctor's office and I love that Roger pen I couldn't watch TV at all if it wasn't for the Roger pen. Yeah. And so, and it's very portable, right? And so it's much easier to use. So life is getting easier as the technology improves.
Okay, Rich Kohler has a question.
Not a question, but a comment. My sister introduced us to these masks that have the window in them so that people can see my lips. And Joni was able to find them on Etsy. Very, very helpful. If nothing else, when I go out in public, people always ask me about my mask. So they bring up the subject and I say it's for communicating with hearing impaired people. So very, very helpful.
Very, that's marvelous. It's just marvelous. And I want one. I want several, actually. So I will find them, and thank you for addressing that.
Okay, I see that Laura Arney has her hand up. Laura?
My question has to do with the delay, the mental delay when somebody talks to you. I find that I'll ask a question and they will talk to me, and it will take 5 or 10 seconds before I can say, oh yes, this and that is the answer. Is there any little signal to remind that person not to assume that I didn't hear it in the first place?
Yes, I think, you know, and as you begin to speak to anyone that's that particularly people who you do talk to frequently, that you remind them of that as you begin to talk. And also, but also we know that when we inform people about what they need to do in order to be understood, that will last for a couple of seconds until they get more involved in what they're saying than how they're saying it. So we can also include something like, is it okay with you if I tap my shoulder? Or if it's okay with you if I raise my hand when you start to speed up again, or when you start to drop your voice, or whatever the issue is, to give them a visual signal so you don't have to interrupt them.
It seems as though the person that I talk to a lot, and they are supposed to know that I have the problem. So I guess what I will have to do is is to say, I can't answer you immediately, give me 5 seconds.
Yes, yes, clarify. And, you know, sometimes it can be helpful also to make a little sign that you put on your chest and say, hearing loss. Because you're right that when people get involved in what they're saying, they forget all about that kind of stuff. And it's habitual. They have been talking the way they talk their whole life. And now we say, because of my hearing loss, I need you to change. Wow, that's hard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock, and Art is going to close up the meeting, and I just want to remind everybody that in April, our meeting is going to be Dr. Elise DePape. We'll be talking about how we hear. I'm sure there's a more sophisticated title, but please join us next month for Dr. Elise DePape. And we lose our captioner at 1 o'clock. So Art, over to you.
Thanks, Sue.
Art, are you there? I think his screen has frozen. Okay, there.
So much of it's interpersonal interaction that makes this work. And I think that's a lot about what the HLAA is about. You take the technology and you use it as best you can, but then it's the interpersonal, and that's where the sharing comes in to understand how things go and to understand how we can communicate better. So thanks a lot, Sam. We really enjoyed seeing you today. And thank all of you who are signed on and stuck with us through this session. Take care.
Folks, I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm not going to end the meeting. We may lose our live captionist, but you're welcome to stay as long as I can keep it going here.